I was 16 when I started getting the photos. It seemed to come out of the blue, but I assume it was because whatever was taking them saw I was now grabbing the mail from my mom since I started getting mail from colleges and work. It was normal for a while until one day when I tossed them onto the table, I saw there was a small pink envelope in the mix. I looked for any signs as to who it was from, but I couldn't find anything on it. It was completely blank. I assumed it was for my mom since it was her birthday a few days ago, but it didn't say her name or anything. I looked out the window, suddenly hearing every single sound around me. I contemplated for what felt like 10 minutes whether I should open it or not. I looked at it, biting my lip in hesitation before slowly opening it. Sitting in the envelope were 7 photos. I picked them up and flipped through them over and over. They were photos of me changing. I felt my body coil up and my stomach turned. I felt as if I was going to throw up. I ran to my room and called Marcus frantically over and over until he picked up. I was stuttering and all I could manage to get out was, "Please hurry, someone's watching me." 5 minutes later, Marcus was there. I heard his car pull up and him run through the door. He looked at me worried. I must have looked a mess. I was curled up on the couch, tears running down my face. He walked into the living room and sat on the couch with me. I picked up the photos and showed him 4 of the photos, telling him the other 3 were nude photos. When did you get these?" Today, I said. He looked at the picture for a bit. "When do you think they took them?" I don't know." I put my face in my hands and I started to bawl again, tears flowing from my eyes. Marcus, he hugged me tightly. I'm sorry. He said, holding his hand on the back of my head. I didn't know what to do or what to think. I felt embarrassed. Someone had been watching me change. I felt stupid for changing in front of my window. I felt it was my fault. I wanted to call the police to tell my parents what happened, but my mom had been arguing with my dad to move for months, and he had just convinced her to stay. I couldn't move. I couldn't live to uproot my life, to lose Marcus. I looked up at him, and I told Marcus to promise not to tell my parents. I don't think that's a good idea, he said, pulling away from me. I can't tell them. I cried. You have to. This could get worse. You don't know what could happen, he said sternly. No. We'll move. She'll never let me come here again. Please don't do this. I can't. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave you. I grabbed his shirt, begging. Please, promise me. Promise you won't tell them. He swallowed and nodded his head reluctantly. I loosened my grip on his shirt and hung my head. He put his hand on my back. I just can't lose my best friend, I said. My voice broken and raw. You won't. Don't worry. I promise I won't tell them. I nodded, tears dripping onto my lap. You want me to stay over, just for tonight? He asked quietly. Marcus hadn't slept over in forever. I didn't even know if my parents would let him, but I wanted to try. I was too scared to sleep alone. A few hours later, my parents got home. Marcus and I put on a movie while my parents made dinner. I was shaking all day, staring out the window, trying to see if someone was there. Marcus tried his best to comfort me, but with every shadow I saw in the corner of my eye, my fears just came back. All through our meal, I was giving glances to Marcus. I could feel my muscles tense the whole time. I felt stiff. I could barely even keep track of my conversations. All I could hear was the sound of my heart. I just sat in silence, hoping he wouldn't say anything to my parents, and he didn't. Afterward, my dad offered to watch a movie with us, but we declined. My mom was in the kitchen grabbing something, so I figured it would be the best time to take my chance. I completed dinner before asking if Marcus could sleep over. My dad said yes, since he trusts Marcus. I mean, we've known each other for so long. I could never even imagine putting that much trust in anyone else. We said goodnight and walked upstairs before my mom came out of the kitchen. I could feel Marcus's uneasiness. I reassured him that it was my best if we didn't tell them, but he said nothing. He walked to the guest bedroom and started to open the door. Wait, I said, putting a hand out. Can you stay in my room tonight? He looked at me. Like, on the floor? I put my hands on my hips. Yes, on the floor, I said, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, sorry. He laughed a bit. Just let me get some blankets and pillows and I'll be right there. I sat on my bed and waited for Marcus to come back. I turned off my light before walking to the window. I looked out. It was dark, but not so dark that I couldn't see. I looked down the street at the houses, the shadow between them, but there was no one. I knew they were there, though. I could feel it. I raised my middle finger to the window and sat on my bed. I instantly felt stupid and quickly covered the window with my curtains. Marcus kicked the door open lightly before tossing a handful of blankets and pillows on the floor. I helped set him up the blankets and we started talking. I was walking around Hershey. Hershey is the neighboring town near us, with Ted yesterday. There was a poster at the theater that said they were showing Alien. That's cool, when is it? I asked. Next Friday, if you want to come, that'd be great, he said, leaning against the wall behind him. Yeah, of course I would, I smiled. Marcus opened his mouth to say something, but my mom walked in. What are you two doing up still? It's almost midnight, she asked. Sorry, Marcus smiled. It's okay, you guys have a good day at school? She walked into the room and leaned on the desk behind her, her eyes wide in absolute horror. I put the pictures right behind her, just facing up. Marcus noticed my fear and stood up. It was fine. How was work? Marcus asked. Same old, same old. No one understands that when houses are up for sale, the furniture in the pictures doesn't come with it. She laughed a little. Marcus didn't understand. Sometimes people allow home tours while they still live in it, she said. Marcus nodded, now understanding. He looked down at his phone. Sorry, my mom's calling. I'll be right back. Marcus walked next to my mom. So also, I got Billy a new poster. You like it? Marcus asked my mom, pointing to the wall. My mom turned her head to see what he was talking about, and he quickly shoved the pictures into his pocket before walking downstairs. She turned back around to ask which one, but he had already walked away. She turned to me laughing a little. You actually like dinner? Yeah, it was good. I'm glad. She leaned her hip on the wall. She looked up at the wall. Well, your father and I are tired, so good night. I love you. Good night, Mom. Go to bed, she said jokingly, pointing a finger at me. She smiled, but it quickly faded. A sad expression washed over her. I followed her trail out of sight to save the blankets on the floor. Oh, Marcus is staying in my room tonight. Is that okay? She looked at me, quickly snapping out of her small trance. I knew she wanted to say something. I saw her fidgeting with her fingers. Yeah, that's fine, she said. Her face turned pink. She bit her lip. I trust you. She gave a brief smile before leaving and closing the door behind her. Marcus came back inside with a distressed look on his face. Your mom okay? He asked. Why? She gave me a look. I shrugged it off. I didn't really want to explain it and make Marcus feel unwelcomed. We shortly went to bed after talking a little bit more. I slept way better than I had in a while, even with everything I found today. Marcus really helped. Despite the fact that he was on the floor, it was comforting to have his company. Halfway through the night, Marcus and I were scared shitless from a call I got onto my computer. Marcus forgot to turn off the automatic call. Shit, sorry, Billy, he said after taking a breath. He walked over to my computer and declined the call. You gotta make that call at a different time, I said. Yeah, I know, sorry. He laid back on the floor before falling back asleep. I tried to fall asleep, but just ended up staring at the ceiling. I was looking at all the decorations on my wall when I heard something outside the window. I tried not to pay much mind to it, it happened all the time, but whatever was making the noise outside wasn't stopping. I wanted to shut my eyes, but I couldn't. I felt if I did, it would come inside my room. I slowly turned to the window, but there was nothing. Just the tree branches dragging along the window, whistling in the wind. I stood up and looked out the window. I put my hands to the side of my eyes and pressed my face up against the glass. There was someone standing outside, and I saw they were holding something. I couldn't tell what it was from that far, but I assumed it was a camera. I don't know why I did this, but I threw my shoes on and ran outside. I looked at the street around me. It was too dark out to see anything. I felt frustrated. I knew it was that pervert. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted them to pay, to feel as stupid and embarrassed as I did, but I couldn't do anything. I realized how stupid it was to run outside and leave the door open behind me. I walked back in, locking the door. Honey, why are you up? My mother said behind me. She scared the shit out of me. She repeated herself. Her voice was raspy and harsh. I strained my posture and turned around. I could see the outline of my mother, but her body was hidden by shadows. Sorry, Mom, I said, stuttering. Why are you up? She repeated for the third time. I thought I saw something and I went to check on it. I'm sorry. It's midnight, she said. I know, I'm sorry. I'll go to bed. I could see she nodded slightly before hanging her head. They don't understand, she said under her breath. What? I asked. She looked up at me. She was silent for a few seconds. Good night, she said lowly. Good night, I said reluctantly. I walked up the stairs looking back. My mom just stood there, watching as I walked upstairs. I tried to focus on her face, but I couldn't. Mom, are you okay? I asked timidly. She said nothing before slowly nodding her head. It sends a shiver down my spine. I walked upstairs and locked my door behind me. Marcus woke up and asked me what was wrong. I said I was okay and it was nothing. Next morning, my mom was fine, so I chalked it up to her sleepwalking. Late after lunch, I decided to go off on a run. I just wanted to blow off some steam and it was still somewhat nice out. So it was perfect for me. I was about a half hour from home. I took the bike trail up through the woods and I stopped to check my phone. It was only 4:30ish, so I had a good amount of time before it got dark. I thought I saw something from the corner of my eye. I looked around. I didn't see anything. I took my headphones out and listened. It was quiet before a squirrel jumped down from a branch. I will admit, I jumped a little. I sighed in relief before going back on my phone. I started walking back for a bit before I noticed something on the ground. A white piece of paper. I picked it up. Before flipping it around, there was a picture of me. From last night. I was leaning up against my window. My hands began to shake at the bottom and sloppy handwriting. It looked like it said, "My love." I looked back up the road ahead of me. I was all alone. What could I do? I was a mile away from any road and I was stuck. I turned to look behind me when someone grabbed the back of my shirt and pushed me down onto the side of the trail. As I fell, I landed on the uneven, harsh ground. The wind knocked right out of me. I felt like I could barely breathe. I tried my best to get a grasp for air. I felt a deep, sharp pain in my ankle. I yelled in pain and covered my head, pleading for them to stop, to leave me alone, that I wouldn't tell anyone. I started to cry hysterically, but they did nothing. I tried to turn to look at them, but they grabbed at my hair, shoveling my face into the ground. I could hear their disgusting heavy breaths and their body pressed against mine. I felt a panic I'd never felt before and never felt after. I started to scream desperately for them to get off me. I screamed with every ounce of energy I had left in me. I heard their heavy breaths as they got off of me, but I could feel them hovering over me. I dug my hands into the dirt and I cried and cried before they grabbed my arm and flipped me over. I saw my arms and around before I saw a young woman looking back at me. She looked at me terrified. She sat me up asking if I was alright. I couldn't even process what she was saying. I felt like I was thinking, but nothing made sense to me. I just looked at her. She sat me up against a tree and called 911. I was taken to the hospital and found that they had broken my ankle, and I fractured a rib when I fell on their stomach. My parents came into my room soon after the police were done talking with me, and my mom cried hysterically while my dad tried to calm her down. I was stuck, kinda just awkwardly watching. After a bit, she calmed down and was able to talk. I told them about the attacker. I kinda couldn't hide it from them. I still didn't tell them about the photos and the one I found right before I was attacked. My mom insisted on moving, but I hysterically broke down crying and she eventually agreed to stay. I could tell she was holding onto this town by a string and anything would set her off. I asked them to leave, and they went home for a few minutes later. After kissing me goodnight, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling when a nurse knocked on the door gently. I tried to sit up, but I couldn't really move too much without pain shooting through me. "A young man brought these for you," she said kindly. I smiled a little, thinking about what stupid note Marcus could have written me. "Thank you." I took the bouquet and placed it on the counter next to me. "Is he a boyfriend?" she asked casually. "No, just a friend, since childhood." "That's sweet of him," she said, passing me a small envelope stuffed between the flowers. She smiled at me one more time and left the room. I looked down at the note, but before opening it slowly, careful not to rip the envelope. I took a small note card out and unfolded it. "I'm sorry I grabbed you so harshly. I promise it was an accident. I hope you feel better soon, my love. I'll be much nicer next time." I knew this fucking handwriting. I crumbled the note and threw it at the wall. I screamed, grabbing at my hair. A few nurses rushed in, asking me what was wrong. I just screamed nonsensely, pointing at the crumpled piece of paper. None of them even looked at the note. They just assured me I was safe and tossed it away. I didn't sleep at all that night, or the rest of the time I was in the hospital. When I got out of the hospital, I stopped staying at my house as much. I would try to go to Marcus's house for nights at a time, even weeks at some points. My mom disapproved of this, but I didn't really care anymore. I just wanted to be out of that house, away from that thing. I still kept receiving the photos, but they were never from outside of Marcus's place, only mine. I started changing in the bathroom with the door closed, so the photos would be of me standing there, working, talking on the phone, or doing anything really. I tried setting up a camera in my room, but it never picked up anything. I felt ill almost every day. Every time I would try to eat, I would just throw up soon after, and I started losing weight. Marcus tried his best to comfort me, but it didn't really work. He took me to every social event he could to get those damn pictures out of my mind, but with every face I saw, I just wondered if one of them was in, if I would meet the face of whoever had been watching me. But of course, I would never know. How could I?